Hello, I'm Maria Hall Brown, and this is LA Currents. When she took over in December of 2022, she made history as the first female to hold the office. I'm delighted to be joined today by the 43rd Los Angeles City Attorney, Hydee Feldstein Soto. So nice to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
How exciting to take this office knowing that you have just opened the door for so many people in the future. Did you really feel that when you took over, that being the first woman in office was going to make a difference?
I did. It felt like a lighter office for a change. I have focused on workplace safety, on making the office a more attractive place to come in, on the internal reorganization of the office to have an executive leadership team that looks like Los Angeles. And I think that all of those priorities were in part because of my background and who I am.
And your background and who you are. You were born and raised in Puerto Rico. I mean, it's a beautiful place, but it's had its, ups and downs in terms of natural disasters, etc. Being there, did that impact how you wanted to pursue your career in terms of public service and in terms of law?
You mean other than living through hurricanes prepared me for this past weekend?
Yeah, there you go.
Yes. I don't know that it's so much specific to Puerto Rico. That gave me the blessing of being bilingual, and that's been tremendously important to me at various times in my career. But I had a father who was a titan in the Puerto Rican legal community, and he practiced law for many years in San Juan. His law firm was Feldstein, Hernandez y Gotay, and certainly having a dad in the field affected what I chose to do with my life. I always felt my father was a corporate lawyer by day. He put food on the table, and he was a do-gooder by night. Aww. My father always took pro bono cases, always viewed his responsibilities as an officer of the court and as a lawyer to give back to the community. And I viewed law as an opportunity to solve problems and implement solutions for clients. And so that's what I hope I've brought to the city attorney's office as well.
Well, it seems to me that all of that is exactly what the city attorney's office does, because it is a huge problem-solving office, as well as, there's the corporate element of what the office does. But it is such a large office. Can you kind of consolidate what some of the sincere day-to-day operations are?
Yes, I put my job in 3 buckets.
Okay.
Bucket 1. Management and administration of a workforce that's close to 1,000 employees, and that has, I believe, 5 unions. So it's a closed shop, fully unionized workforce with lawyers and paralegals and hearing officers and investigators and a business office and all that goes with managing that big a corporate body. The second bucket I put it in is practicing law. And that's everything from representing the city of Los Angeles, all interpretations of state and federal law and how they affect our city rest with my office. All advice, Brown Act advice, political advice, ongoing advice on how to get something done for the hundreds of boards and commissions of the city, as well as for 17 other elected officials, rests with my office. And the prosecution of misdemeanors committed by adults within the city of Los Angeles, where the people of the state of California, as opposed to the city of Los Angeles, is the client. But that all rests with my office. I'm the general counsel to the Los Angeles World Airports, the general counsel to the Los Angeles Harbor and Port, and the general counsel to the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. All of the departments from animal services to the zoo, and everything in between, like public works, planning and land use, housing, Department of Cultural Affairs, whatever the city does, we touch it in some manner. The last piece of the job, the third bucket, that I haven't paid as much attention to over the last year, because I've really been focused on getting my arms around the office, is being an elected official and making sure that as an elected official, I'm responsive to the needs of my constituents, responsive to the needs beyond just city government, and sponsoring legislation in Sacramento that will hopefully help our city moving forward. Doing the outward-facing task of the office, and that's hopefully going to be my focus in this next year. Internally, I'll give you an example. We have broken down walls between departments, so we've recently gotten a number of complaints about the backlog in claims against the city. We surged capacity, and we dedicated half a dozen new people on loan to the claims department for the next 60 days. Wow. To clean up the backlog. So as one office working together, we can get an awful lot done, and being responsive to what is affecting people's lives on a daily basis is what I'm hoping to get in place and institutionalized over the next 12 months.
You said something just when we first started speaking about how you want the city attorney's office to look like the city of Los Angeles. What did you mean by that? I mean, are there people that you've hired, or you're trying to make sure that there's...
Yes.
Okay.
All of the above.
Okay.
When I joined the office, I believe there were 1 or 2 women in leadership positions. I'd have to count to tell you precisely how many now, but I think it's over half a dozen. When I joined, I am not aware of anyone who identified as LGBTQ+ in leadership. I now have 3 people who so identify. I've just promoted a Latina to be the head of municipal real estate and the proprietary branches as part of the executive team. I've tried to pay attention to hard work and competence and hiring from within. So rather than bringing with me a posse of individuals to a point who had my background or experience, I've promoted an African-American woman to be the head of my criminal branch. I've hired an African-American man to be the head of my real estate branch, and it's part of the process. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is really just part of what we're doing as we restructure the office. Where someone has been unbelievably competent, and the head of my litigation department is a white male, and he's just stayed in place and is doing a terrific job at managing that branch.
Wow. Well, speaking of departments, I was trying to do a little bit of my due diligence, so I had a bit of an understanding. So there's a municipal branch, civil litigation, criminal, real estate, public rights. That's a lot of territory to cover.
Yes.
So the municipal part of it, that's pretty straightforward. That's, we want to build something. How do we...
That's actually, if we want to build something like real estate, that's going to be in the real estate branch.
Okay. But municipal is contracts.
Well, yes, it's contracting. It's procurement for the city. So if what you're going to do is look for an IT consultant, and you want to run a request for proposals to comply with the competitive bidding procedures of the city charter, that all flows through the municipal branch.
Okay.
We are also staffing all of the commission meetings. If you look at city council, there's one of my lawyers in front. That's true for all public hearings across the city. And most of those are staffed out of the municipal branch. We do a lot of large projects in public works with the Board of Public Works. We represent the Department of Sanitation. That's a lot of regulatory and compliance work as well. And so it is anything that isn't really in court.
Okay. And then you said, with the civil litigation part of it, those are the personal injury against the city, and there was a backlog and you've consolidated that.
Yes.
Okay. And then criminal, that's anything?
It is prosecution of adult misdemeanors in the city.
It's like vandalism.
Yes. And the 3 largest categories, buckets, if you will, are domestic violence, DUIs, and guns. Unregistered guns, violence, brandishing a weapon. When these matters aren't prosecuted by the district attorney as a felony because they don't rise to the level of a felony. They didn't actually cause injury to a person. My office will pick it up and prosecute it as a misdemeanor if it's within city limits and committed by an adult.
Can we change the domestic violence thing to just not be a misdemeanor? Sorry, my personal opinion.
Well, let me give you an example of what I do
Okay.
for some of the domestic violence cases, because I agree with you. They're very dangerous. I've taken a bill to Sacramento this year where what I'm hoping for is we have situations where a court issues a protective order or a keep-away order, stay-away order in a dangerous situation, usually domestic violence or celebrity stalking. And the probationer goes ahead and violates that keep-away order yet again. I have asked Sacramento to allow us, despite a no-cash bail policy, where you have someone who's violated a prior order in that way, to allow us to retain the person under supervision pending trial.
Oh.
Because it puts the victim at risk.
Yeah.
In the area of child sex abuse, oftentimes it's the intimate partner of the custodial parent who commits the abuse. My office will take those situations and separately charge each touching, each assault that we can prove, and then we will ask the court to award the maximum on each charge, 364 days of incarceration, and then we will ask the court to run those sentences consecutively, so that for some of the worst offenders that aren't prosecuted by the DA's office, we will prosecute and we will seek longer sentences. And we've gotten sentences as long, I think the longest was 11 years,
Wow.
but as long as 4, 5, and 6 years, which is well outside what we would normally otherwise do. So we treat the domestic violence and the child abuse cases pretty seriously.
That's interesting. Thank you for it. There's so many specific things I want to get into, but just in general, like you said, real estate, that's contract if we're going to build something, especially with, I would imagine, the homeless efforts to house.
Yes, but it's also, I mean, it's leasing in circumstances where the Mayor's Inside Safe program has been leasing things. It's tenants' rights, and we're looking to devote a lot of resources to that in this upcoming year, assuming we have the budget for it. It is planning and land use. It is housing and all of the affordable housing financing, the distribution of the Triple H money. There's a number of factors that go into real estate. If it touches, it's city-owned property and ground leases. If it touches land or it touches buildings, it's in the real estate branch.
Okay, and then finally, public rights.
Public rights is something I'm very proud of. We've taken all of the civil prosecution out of the criminal branch where it used to be and put it in its own department. That takes the advantage of we are able to use Sacramento's authority under 17200 to subpoena and investigate potential civil actions in the area of consumer protection, environmental justice, nuisance abatement, just about any kind of regulatory violation that hurts the public. We bring those actions. Most recently, we settled a case against H&R Block for their tax preparation software, where they were charging rather than offering the IRS free software. We brought a case against Nightfall Properties that was hosting a platform for all the party homes around Los Angeles and specifically in the hills. So we have used it to investigate home health that engaged in elder abuse or fraud. And so we've been using the tools afforded to us by a subpoena in the public rights branch to do public good.
Yeah, the party house thing was a big thing. Where would like the copper theft fall?
Well, I'm very excited about the initiative. It was under Council President Krikorian's leadership. He formed a partnership with our office, with the Bureau of Street Lighting, the LAPD, and the LA Port Police to work together to eliminate copper wire theft. Now, you might say, what is the big deal with copper wire theft? The fact is the city spends millions, possibly tens of millions of dollars every year replacing the copper wire that folks reach into the street lighting boxes and steal to get a couple of bucks for the used wire. In order to stop that at scale, what the council president and our office and street services and police have focused on is stopping the demand for the copper wire. If an individual takes copper wire, of course they're going to be subject to criminal prosecution if you catch them in the act and arrest them. But it's much more effective to go back to the resellers of the copper wire. There are 661 copper and other metal recyclers and purchasers that are regulated. that have to register with the state and have to register with the city for their business and are not supposed to be buying copper wire without at least 3 days' notice into the registry in order to ensure that it's not stolen. My office has sent out 661 letters to all of these resellers, putting them on notice that we will be enforcing the law. And so I'm excited on this initiative. I think that the laws for metal recycling businesses were there for something like the public rights branch. It is a crime that, if you have to prosecute it individually, is very difficult to enforce. But if you can curtail the demand for the stolen goods, you can really control it at scale.
Right. There's also something else that you recently started, the Community Law Corps.
Okay, so the Community Law Corps is within my municipal law branch, and it serves as a bridge. I'm incredibly proud to say that we've staffed it with both lawyers and community resources specialists as the primary point of contact to address everything that in the city could go wrong. So if there's a broken pipe, if there's a flood, if 311 isn't responding, if there's a party house, if there's a nuisance abatement action, Community Law Corps establishes partnerships with other city departments and with law enforcement to resolve problems that enforcement on its own couldn't necessarily adequately resolve, and to address the problems where the city otherwise only has an armed response. And there are alternatives to the LAPD enforcing noise regulations and party houses. We can bring lawsuits. It can be referred to our public rights branch, which is what happened with Nightfall.
So who's participated so far? Obviously, you mentioned Nightfall, but how is all that going to ultimately work out?
Well,
How do you see it?
we've handled 685 requests for assistance since September 15th, which is when the Community Law Corps went into operation. It is staffed at this point with 4 lawyers and 3 community resource specialists. We're hoping to grow it over time, but obviously right now the city has a hiring freeze, and so we're doing the best we can to cover the city. Because it operates as a point of entry to the office, Community Law Corps can leverage off of all the resources in the office to address what a particular constituent or community might need in the moment.
Do you see the future of having multiple?
No, it's all going to be under Community Law Corps, and it's all going to be part of the outreach function of my office, along with legislation and government relations. But it's really an effort to ensure that our neighbors can get their quality of life issues addressed without having to wait for 311 or an armed response from the police.
Your office has also, gone after a pretty dramatic situation. You've been tackling sex trafficking.
I have, within the city limits, and we focused our efforts for now on the South Figueroa corridor. And we've also focused primarily on the traffickers and the customers or johns of minors. The task force is not really focused on consensual adult commercial sex or sex workers. Those are not the folks that fall within the arrest parameters of at least this task force. We are focused very much on the trafficking of children and teenagers. And if you look at the foster care youth system and the dependency courts, all too often the result is that a child is either defrauded, seduced, or coerced into sex work. And it's that kind of violence and that kind of crime that we're really going after. We have the average age of a child trafficked in the Figueroa corridor is between 11 and 14 years old. It's quite serious. And this particular track is one of California's most notorious. So we are geographically focused, and we are focused on a particular harm, and that's the harm to the minors. So far, I hate to use the word rescue, okay? We've helped over 60 minors, over 60 juveniles to accept services and help outside of the Figueroa Quarter. And we are now working on forming the partnerships that we need to provide them not only with immediate shelter and respite and a place to heal, but also with a longer-term path toward good-paying jobs. So we're hoping that some of the female-dominated unions, whether it be the hotel workers or the healthcare workers or stagehands or stylists or makeup artists in the entertainment industry, will help us by focusing some of their apprenticeship programs to some of these young girls that are coming in off the street once they're in a place where they're ready to go back to work and learn a trade.
What's the culpability of the property owners of those hotels, motels?
My office has partnered with the U.S. Attorney's Office, so they are really going after the traffickers. My office is focused on the Johns and the places, the motels. When the crime is as open and notorious and blatant as it is in a property, such as a dozen of the motels up and down the Figueroa Quarter, where those motels have ignored laws that require them to post signs and phone numbers for national human trafficking hotlines, my office has been going in with law enforcement, specifically centered around the 77th Street Police Station, and helping motels come into compliance. We have sued to shut down 2 motels that, despite numerous orders to comply, continued to be epicenters for illegal activity. And of course, the problem isn't just trafficking of minors. It brings drug dealing, it brings guns. And if you look at the communities around Figueroa Street, many of them are working families. There's many schools and many churches and many homes in the area. And so we're trying to stop some of that blight and some of that activity, especially as it spills over into the quality of life of primarily Latino and African American families that live there.
Well, it sounds like you've done an enormous amount of work in a very short period of time, but you still have more to go. What are some of your hopes and goals for the City Attorney's Office while you are in office, and what have you been really proud of so far?
There's internal goals and external goals. The internal goals were what I spent my first year on. Mm-hmm. And when I leave office, whether that's after 4 years or 8 years, I hope to leave behind an institution that has functioned as one, where the leadership of each of the branches and departments is collaborating across disciplines and across divisions in the office to produce a first-rate work product for the client and to excel in the thought leadership in each of the areas where we practice. I hope to leave a legacy of fixes with legislation and ordinances that work. I hope to have shut down many of the pathways to corruption that have been identified at City Hall, and have implemented processes that are transparent, open, and efficient for those who do business in and with our city. And if I can accomplish that, I did my job.
Well, it sounds like you're on the right track, that's for sure. So if people want to learn more about the City Attorney's Office and more about what you're doing, what's the best approach?
Please go to the website, which is cityattorney.lacity.gov, or call our Community Law Corps hotline, which is 213-978-7878.
And by the way, how this is a very short question, but how is technology being integrated into your office? Is it really something that you're pushing as well?
Yes. If you look at my budget requests for the last couple of years, I've included some significant chunks for technology. We are about halfway through the implementation of a new system for our criminal branch. We have a study from an outside consultant on what we should be able to do for our civil branch as well. But it's all a question of, is it going to be in the budget?
Thank you so much, Hydee. I really appreciate your time. This has been spectacular. I look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you so much, Maria, and I look forward to coming back.
And that's a wrap on this LA Currents.